When was the last time that you would say you did anything at all? Okay, not just anything. Let me give you some specifics. Something that is very integral to who you are, something that's a very core part of your being, something that has become part of your daily routine, or something that you're finding yourself to be passionate about, or something you've always been passionate about. When was the last time that you actually did that thing, not for the sake of doing it, but because of the joy that you get from doing it, or simply because of the joy that you're about to do that thing? When was the last time that you did something like that? Wait to give you a minute to let it, simmer, to let it enter very well. So, the reason why I'm actually asking this is from the perspective of a Christian, me. I would say that there are so many times where I come to this point that in my devotional life, whether it be in my devotional life, whether it be in the instructions that God has given me to do, whether it be in my daily routine, whether it be in just specific thing, because God wants to be involved in every part of our life. In fact, He is part of every part of our lives if we let Him in. Nothing is off limits to God. Your health, your finances, your academics, they're not off limits to God, by the way. And this is something that I'm also still learning. Yeah. But yes, when was the last time that you did something that God asked you to do because of the joy of doing it? And I know there are so many times that we'll do things just because of the fact that God has given us that instruction, which is also very important, because there are times that we need to drag ourselves to actually do those things. But the place I'm really coming from is, when was the last time that you did something because of the joy of the Lord? And the reason why I'm saying this is because of the scriptures that I'm going to share. The first one is in Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10. And when we read, we see the whole context that the people were gathered, they were listening to the law of the Lord. And when you hear from God, when God gives you instructions, there's a way it feels heavy on your heart, that you want to weep, you want to cry, you want to grieve. And they were doing exactly that. So they were weeping, crying, and grieving. And now Nehemiah comes and he says, "Oh no, do not weep. I mean, go and eat choice food, go and make merry, basically, eat, drink, because the joy of the Lord shall be your strength." Now, this is when Nehemiah is talking about the law, and as we all know, laws are not something that we would say are just anything to joke or play about. This is the law that Nehemiah was talking about, and Nehemiah was here saying, "Go and make merry. The joy of the Lord shall be your strength." And in another verse in Isaiah chapter 12, verses 24, I believe, oh no, verses 4. Yeah, verses 3, actually, verses 3. It says, "With joy you will draw water from the springs of salvation," or depending on the translation that you're reading from, it might say, "from the wells of salvation." And the reason I'm pointing this out is because there are times that we come to in our walk with God where it feels like we're doing things not because we enjoy doing them. And I mean, it's walking with God is I don't want to use hard, but it's hard because we are inherently as humans born with a sinful nature. So of course the flesh wants to fight the spirit. So it takes a lot of struggle, it takes a lot of willpower and submission, intentional submission to God each day for us to be able to walk with God. So there are times that we come to walking with God and we're just walking with Him because, I mean, we've completely forgotten the whole point. Like, this trend, this social media trend that's going around, that I almost forgot the whole point. I think the trend is actually past now, but the trend that says I almost forgot the whole point. And like, maybe they're having an activity with their kids, or they're just with friends. The whole point, the core part of us being Christians, apart from the fact that we get to have a relationship with God, that we get to walk with the Lord, is also our joy with God, because walking with God is something that is very joyful. And of course, there will be moments of trials and tribulations, but if we can only look and enjoy those moments of joy even more if we can go back to those moments where we are being intentional about keeping our joy. Because joy, in as much as it's not something that we can earn ourselves, I mean, God has to give us that joy. But when we get it, we need to set up systems and structures to be able to keep that joy. It's also our responsibility to hold this joy and be like, this is mine and I'm not going to let it go. Because without joy, there are certain things that we can do with God. There are certain ways we can no longer walk with God because we have lost our joy. And with joy, what do? We draw from the wells of salvation. So I just wanted to remind you, because it's something I've been thinking about myself, to go back to those moments where walking with God is not a chore. Hmm? Let's make walking with God not a chore anymore. Let's make walking with God something that is joyful, something that is holy and righteous and joyful, and something that we do out of love, not out of compulsion, but love. And there's something that my pastor said today, because in my church, the Elevation Church, we are currently on this series of generosity. And there's this verse that says, for the Lord, that I mean, give not out of compulsion. Basically, that's the whole context. And it says, for the Lord loves a cheerful giver. So apart from money, apart from your finances, apart from those material things, you can give God with joy, with cheerfulness, your devotional time. You can give God with cheerfulness, with everything He has given to you. You can give God your time cheerfully. You can just do it out of joy. And it's, as I'm saying this, it sounds very simple, right? But it takes a lot of intentional practice and structures that today, even if I may not feel like it, that's something I've also been learning from Pastor Emmanuel Aaron on 100 Days of Discipleship. Pastor Emmanuel Aaron always keeps emphasizing the fact that even though we may not feel like it, when there's so much importance of walking with God with a joyful heart, with a heart that's not happy by the way, because things have to happen for us to be happy. Happenings lead to happiness, but joy comes from the heart. It comes from a deeper understanding. Do you know how much easier your work would be today? How much my work with God would be? I mean, this is something that I'm also learning. Everything that I say, that I share here, is since I'm learning every time, and that as I'm sharing it, I'm also putting in that structure and system to keep it in place in practice. How much easier it would be if you woke up and each day you were joyful enough to spend time with God. Like you actually woke up and you said, oh, I can't wait to open my Bible. Like you are joyful. Like, when you first got to know about God, right? There's a way that you felt so joyful, like, wow, I can feel the presence of the Lord. As you continued, do you know why you lost that joy? You lost it because it started to feel like a chore. It started to feel um like just something that you have to do. And I mean, it's part of our lives, right? Because walking with God is an integral part of every day. It's like when you wake up, you brush your teeth. You don't always feel so joyful, like, oh, I need to brush my teeth. But if you have a new toothbrush, oh, I want to brush my teeth with this new toothbrush. And depending on how joyful you are, or how happy you are, it would go on for a bit before it eventually fades away. Same thing when it comes to walking with God. When we get new understanding, new revelation, we need to keep going to the facts, keep reminding ourselves on the fact that this is something new and this is something about God. And you may not always feel like, oh, we have this big revelation, but still, we are walking with God, and that in itself is joyful.